discussion regarding the construction of Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility, and we have Mr. Gregg Boysen joining us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Gregg Boysen. I'm the city engineer. I'm also the project manager for the Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility. We usually start out with an aerial that's produced by Mitchell and his crew and Victor, and so I'd like to start that for everyone. So this is January of 2019. You can see there's quite a bit of snow on the ground, of course. And then we jump right into May, and you can see the difference in the amount of construction that has happened in just those few months. This is a photograph of the existing headworks building that will be demolished at the conclusion of the project, and this is the new headworks building. And I'll get into all of the buildings in my presentation. This is the new Dewatering Building. You can see that most of the buildings are nearing completion. The roofs have gone on most of the buildings. The only two buildings that are left to be built vertical are the UV building and the new headworks building. This is the digester support building that houses our two new digesters. And then these are our final clarifiers that will be in operation starting June 6th. This is an overview of the entire plant site. You can see down at the lower right-hand corner, that's the Santa Rita Park that will be reconditioned as part of this construction. So what I'd like to talk to you tonight about is the design improvements, the construction progress, schedule update, and the budget update. Because there are two new council members, welcome. I thought I'd go into a little bit more depth, so this will be a little bit longer than what I've done in the past, but I wanted to get into a little bit of the background and the reasoning for the project itself. The purpose of the project is to assure that the City of Durango meets the State of Colorado's Regulation 31, and it's also to meet or exceed the state's new 2019 wastewater discharge permit for our wastewater plant. And there are probably a lot of people that aren't familiar with Regulation 31 that comes from the state, so I'm just going to read the quote out of the brochure. It states, "It is intended to implement the state's act by maintaining and improving the quality of the state surface waters. This regulation is based on the best available knowledge to ensure the suitability of Colorado's waters for beneficial uses, including public water supplies, domestic, agricultural, industrial, and recreational uses, and the protection and propagation of terrestrial and aquatic life." So that's pretty specific on what we have to do as part of our wastewater treatment plant. Periodically, we get a new discharge permit from the state. The state issuing authority is the Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, the Water Quality Control Division. We were supposed to get a new permit in May of 18 due to state staffing shortages. They didn't get that permit to us until April of this year, and it's still under review. But that date of May of 18 is important because we had to do some milestone completion of construction in order to meet that schedule. Also, in December of last year, the EPA, through the Clean Water Revolving Fund branch, issued us an honorable mention in their PiC Recognition program. So what PiC stands for is Performance and Innovation in the SRF Creating Environmental Success. So they looked at what we were doing to our wastewater treatment plant, and they felt that it was worth giving us some recognition on the effort and improvements that we're doing to create cleaner water for the Animas River. So I thought I would bring that to everyone's attention tonight. To the right is the article that's in their magazine that they publish, and then there's the plaque that we were awarded. So this plaque will go up in the new wastewater plant when it's completed. So pretty exciting for all of us, I think. So what I'd like to do first is go through the process, just so that everybody is familiar with why we're building what we're building. This photo, this aerial, is from pre-construction in 2017, and I'll just go through how the water passes through the old plant and then go through the new plant also, just so everyone's familiar. The flow comes in from the city and goes into the headworks building where the majority of the large solids are removed. It then flows into the primary clarifiers where more material is removed, goes down to the aeration basin, and the aeration basin is where the biological process occurs. Everything prior to this has been mechanical. This is the biological process. I just want everyone to note the size of the aeration basin on the old plant. It'll be obvious on the next slide how small that really was. So from the aeration basin, the product goes into the final clarifiers. This is the final mechanical process before we disinfect it in the UV building, and then it's discharged into the Animas River. As part of the process, and I'll get into more depth, we use a anaerobic digestive system to basically decompose a lot of the material. This material, when it's done, was sent over to the sludge storage building. So in the past, what we did is this liquid would be stored in this building, and then we would hire a tanker truck to come in, suck the liquid out of this building, and then we would dry land apply it to the farms around Durango. This was very costly, and we didn't have a whole lot of control over this trucking process. So as part of the new process, we decided that we would eliminate this and come up with a better process. The old plant also had a trickling filter and the admin building. Those have both been demolished for the new construction. So what I've done is I've superimposed the new construction on top of the old aerial, and you can kind of see how much increased construction and building there is compared to the old plant. Again, I'd like to just go through the process real quickly. The flow comes in from the city, goes into the headworks building. You can see that the headworks building, physically the size is much bigger than the old headworks building. That was the round building with the glass mirrors on it. The headworks building removes the big solids, then it flows into the primary clarifiers. These are two of the vaults that were existing in the old plant, but we've put the domes on it, so I'm sure everyone has seen the new domes that have been installed. From the primary clarifiers, the flow goes into the aeration basin. The aeration basin is kind of what they sound like. We pump air into the fluid, and that creates a good environment for the biological process. To do that, we had to build a new blower building, which is number 5, to add air into that water stream. We've also built 2 new additional final clarifiers. This doubles our capacity for the final clarifiers. They were installed where the old aeration basins were. So you could see physically the difference in size between the old aeration basin and the new aeration basin. So I just want to emphasize that we're getting a lot more treatment in our effluent than we were in the past. Again, from the primary clarifiers, the flow goes to the UV building where it gets disinfected back into the Animas River. The digester now pumps the liquid sludge over to our dewatering building, which you saw on the aerial. And that process I'll get into a little bit more, but that takes the place of where we used to use the tanker trucks to haul the liquid solids. We actually now haul solids. So. And then the liquid that comes out of the dewatering process, we pump it over into the side stream basin where we do a quick little treatment before we put it back into the aeration basin for retreatment. So that's kind of the processes, and I know that was quick, but it kind of helps explain the actual construction. I'll go through the construction in the same process, so we'll start at the Headworks building and end at the UV building. So the Headworks building is one of the last two buildings that we need to finish construction on. We've gone vertical with the precast concrete walls. You can see in the left photograph. On the right photograph, you can see these are mechanical screen troughs. This is where a lot of the large solids are removed. The Headworks building also removes the sand and grit from the liquid flow before we pass it on to the primary clarifiers. So these were the two existing tanks that we repurposed, we relined, and we brought up to current standards, but we also put domes on top of them. And those domes' purpose is to collect all the gas that comes off of the product that sits in the primary clarifiers. And that gas is pumped through activated carbon to remove all the odor. So that's our biggest odor control improvement that we've done on the entire plant. We felt that was very important. We heard during the design process that a lot of the public thought that the odor was too much to take, and so we did install the odor control process. So the purpose of the primary clarifiers is to let the velocity of the fluid slow down. This allows the sediment to settle to the bottom of the clarifier and lets everything that is floatable float to the top. We skim that material off and we pump that over to the anaerobic digesters. So I'll talk about that process a little bit later. So we removed the big stuff in the headworks. This is the finer stuff that we're removing in the primary clarifiers, and then the flow goes into our aeration basins. So our aeration basins are 193 feet long, 134 feet wide, and almost 19 feet deep. The old basin was had a volume of about 0.7 million gallons, and the new basin has a total volume of 3.2 million gallons. So it's almost 5 times greater than our previous process. So again, we're getting better treatment, we're slowing the water down, we're giving the liquid more time to be processed. The aeration basin is a biological nutrient removal process. It's a BNR. And this one in particular is a Johannesburg process. So the aeration basin is broken into 5 zones, and each one of those zones creates a individual environment for the nutrient removal. So this is a microorganism process that actually feeds on the nutrients that's in the liquid, and it either creates gas or an inert solid. So there are 5 zones within that aeration basin, and it's sludge zone, anaerobic zone, anoxic zone, swing zone, and the aerobic zone. They all do something a little bit different. The sludge zone reduces the nitrate, the anaerobic reduces the phosphorus, the anoxic reduces the nitrogen. We have a swing zone that gives the operators the ability to either remove nitrogen or ammonia. And the way they do that or don't do that is by adding air to it. And then there's the aerobic zone. And the aerobic zone removes ammonia mostly by adding air to the fluid. So the air that's added to the aerobic area, it comes from our new blower building. So our blower building houses 3 high-speed microturbines that compresses and increases the velocity of that air to pump it over to the aerobic zone. We had to put this in a building, and you can see the photograph in the center lower part of the screen. That's the southern exposure of the building. The photograph on the lower right shows the mechanical, all the electrical equipment that's required to run those high-speed turbines. So you can see the amount of power that's required, and I'll talk about that a little bit later also in the presentation. And then also in the blower building, we have 3 of the large alum tanks. That's aluminum sulfate, and we use that for a coagulant in the settling process. The flow then goes from the aeration basin into our new final clarifiers. Again, we've doubled the size of our final clarifier process by building 2 new tanks. This is kind of the final mechanical process before we release the water. This water at this time is as clean or cleaner than the water in the river. So again, the clarifier process is to let whatever's left in the water to settle out or float to the top. We skim it off and we pump it over to the aerobic digesters. So from the clarifiers, the water goes into the UV disinfection system. The building on the right side of the photographs is our old building. There was a single stream of UV lamps in that building. The new building that is shown on the left will have 2 streams of UV lamps. So we'll get double the disinfection, plus it will have a lot of redundancy. So from that point, it flows into the Animas River again. So we've collected all of the solids from the clarifiers and other processes. We pump it over to the anaerobic digesters. We heat and we mix the material that's in those digesters, and it creates methane gas. So we collect that methane gas and use it later on in the process. But the digester support building also houses all of the fats, oil, and grease tanks. So if we collect oil and grease from the downtown hotels, we can bring it out to the plant site. We can slowly add it to our digesters, create more methane gas, and use it in our process. The digester support building also houses all of our gas cleaning equipment, which is H2S removal, the siloxane, water, and any foam that's in that gas. That building also has a lot of heat exchangers and pumps that operate the digesters. So from the methane gas that we've collected at the digesters, we send that over to 3 of our micro turbines that create electricity. And the amount of gas that we create with these 3 micro turbines, we can create enough electricity to power those air blowers that ran the aeration basin. So we don't create enough gas to offset the total cost of electricity at the plant, but about 65 to 70% is covered by us burning that methane gas. So we're trying to keep everything renewable in the process as much as possible. The treatment complex building also houses 19 pumps. That's where a lot of the process pumping occurs, including the hot water pumps and the boiler for the rest of the treatment process. And we have another process to remove the solids out of the liquid at the treatment complex. These are RTDs, rotating drum thickeners. The material that they remove out of the liquid at this process also goes into the digesters. So you can see how important the digester process is. So from the digesters, when the process is complete with the microbiology, the product is called sludge, and we send this liquid sludge over to the dewatering building. And this building is to replace the old tanker hauling that we used to do. So the dewatering building has rotating screen presses that removes the liquid from the solid. And the solids we put into trucks or into roll-off dumpsters where we can take to the Bondad landfill. So the landfill uses that as augmentation or amendment to their soil out there for their reconditioning. So we get good use out of that material again. The liquid that comes out of that sludge is pumped over to the side stream basin, which is a smaller aeration basin. And we use that to remove the ammonia as much as possible before we put that stream back into the aeration process. And we circulate it through again. So this is a recirculation process that treats the water as much as we possibly can. Another item that we've installed that people kind of forget is we've put in a new emergency generator for the plant site. So the new generator with the old generator is sufficient to power the entire plant. So we don't need LPEA if something happens. We get a lightning strike, we can still, most importantly, disinfect the liquid before it goes into the Animas River. So a small part, but something that I thought was pretty important. So schedule, the original contract start date was May 15th of 17. I talked a little bit about that milestone. We thought that we were going to get a new discharge permit on May 1st of 18, so that's why we got the blower building and the aeration basin completed by that date. And then the final completion date was May 15th of this year. As the budget contingency is allowed, the city has requested numerous additions and changes to the project scope for more efficiency in the operation and to replace equipment that is at the end of its useful life. As a result of these city requests, the current completion date of the project is now September 24th. So as we've added construction projects to this project or sub-projects, the contractor has asked for more time to do that, which we thought was reasonable. So that extended the completion date out a few months. So as of today, the contract, 750 days have passed, and there are 112 days left in the contract, which means the contract is about 87% complete, with 13% remaining to be done. As far as budget goes, the original budget was $59 million. The final negotiated construction contract was a little over $54 million, which left $5.2 million in construction contingency. As the city has issued 58 contract change orders and paid for miscellaneous operation expenses, when combined, what we spent so far is right at $4 million, which leaves $1.2 million in the contingency, or about 23% of that original fund. So we've got 13% of the construction to finish, we've got 23% of our contingency left. We feel that we're in a pretty good position right now to complete the project within our budget. So just an example, some of the operation expenses included, we are paying for all the building security access, so to make sure that the site and every building has security, so that no one can get into the plant to do any harm to the plant or themselves. Also, we had to reset the primary electrical service from LPEA, which was fairly expensive. We bought a bunch of new IT equipment for the project, and all of these expenses totaled a little over $600,000. So out of 58 of the change orders that we've issued, 51 were a request directly from the city. And to assure that the project was originally in budget, when we started this whole process, we strategically left out non-critical items. An example is we didn't paint all of the existing buildings. We thought that that was non-critical, we didn't have to have that, so we didn't put that into the original contract. But as the project has proceeded and we felt budget would allow, we've added 51 of these additional change orders. And a few of those, just as an example of the 51, is we upgraded the Bodo 2 sanitary sewer lift station. By doing this, we were able to eliminate a lift station, and so we don't have to pay the electricity or the manpower or the maintenance on that lift station. And those cost savings will offset that $573,000 expense, and the payout is it's pretty far out, but it's still a payout. So we thought that was a very good expense to have Archer Western complete. We also built a new IT room, server room. We painted the existing buildings, like I mentioned. We had to do some asbestos abatement on the existing headworks and sludge storage building. And then we replaced a lot of the old equipment and piping. So we replaced the polymer feed system, the master dewatering pumps, the return activated sludge pipes, the thickened waste activated pipes. So all this equipment was 30 plus years old. We thought that we were going to have to replace it in the near future anyway, so we thought since we have the contractor on site, we have the funds available, it made perfect sense to go ahead and get these changes made.
And these were part of the change orders?
These were all part of the 51 change orders that we requested. They weren't part of the original contract, but they were something that we thought that we could afford, and it was a proper time to do. A couple things we added that we thought we would increase the The processing with is we added a hot water flushing system to the RSP building. So that's where the primary clarifiers were, where they take the solid materials from the flow stream and we pump it over to the digesters. That's typically laden with a lot of grease, which coagulates in the pipe. Flushing it with hot water made a lot of sense to us, so we included that in the project. And then we installed a higher coating on the digester. We thought that by putting a better coating on the inside of the digester, the life of that digester would last up to 15, 20 years longer than the original coating. So those are just some of the examples of where we've spent our money. I'd be glad to give you a whole list of the 51 if you would like to see it. But so we've gone through the process. We talked a little bit about construction, the budget, and the schedule. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I was ask you about the odor retention
Yes, sir.
system. Is that fully functional now? Is that
It is. It is.
filtering taking place?
And I kind of glossed over that quickly, but in front of the photograph with the primary clarifiers, there are two boxcar looking vaults, and those are full of activated carbon. And so we actually suck the air off of the primary clarifiers with these big fans. We push it through the activated carbon and it discharges it into the atmosphere, cleaned of all odors.
So whatever odor is present at the site today is pretty much what the community will experience.
I think it'll get a little bit better. I
Yep.
mean, we're still working on some of the process from the old plant. So I think when we get the new final clarifiers going and some of the fine tuning of the process, I think the odors will even be a little bit less. I don't think they're that noticeable, especially since we've turned the odor control system on
Thank you.
When did you turn that on?
last week.
First of all, thank you for this presentation, and it's really interesting to get the 65 to 70% of the electricity being generated in-house. That's great. I'm curious about training, because I see all this and I'm wondering what the professional development will be for them, or the training, so that they're successful in implementing this.
So we have two training processes. Each piece of equipment has their supplier that comes in and they start up the equipment. And at that time, they provide all of the staff the training on that particular equipment. We also have our design consultant that comes into town and explains how all of that equipment works together to create the product that we're looking for. So we get training from the actual manufacturer and also the person that did the design on the plant.
And then after that initial day or whatever it is of training, is there a relationship where you can call back in on some kind of advice if needed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that goes without saying. Everything is at least a year in warranty, and we have a good relationship with our design consultant, so I don't have a problem with that also. And there's additional training that we can pay for. We can send our staff to individual training on either process or equipment, and they're readily available.
Right, thank you.
Is the water coming into the system tested, the water that flows in to help it work, and then the water that flows out tested, so that you know that how often is the water that flows out tested?
Daily, all day long.
Right, and so you always know that if what's coming in is of a certain quality, you know that you're putting better quality water out into the river then.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Again, the quality that we put in the river is usually cleaner than the river.
You might mention the certification the plant operators need to have too to follow up on
Right. All of
those regulations.
this is a Class B plant, but all of our plant operators are Class A operators, so they have to have education and testing and experience to get those certifications. It's the same with our collection and distribution team. Those all have certifications. Obviously, they're different, but and same with our water treatment plant folks. So everybody is well qualified and certified to operate the equipment in the plant.
What about an update on the administrative offices that was removed?
So we bid the admin building and the vac truck building. Those were originally part of the scope of the plant, and we had to remove those in order to get within our budget. Again, those were incidentals. We felt in order to meet the EPA and the state discharge permits, we needed to get the plant in operation. So we pulled those 2 buildings out of the project. We went out to bid. We did some modifications to the designs, mostly for interior staff requests. That bid came in a little bit over our budget, so we've been in negotiations with the low bid contractor. We have a meeting tomorrow to go over what his final numbers are, but they're looking pretty positive.
And
So
where's the money for this come out of? Does it come out of the sewer reserve and the water reserve, or where does it come from for the administration building?
it comes out of the enterprise fund for collection and distribution for wastewater.
For the sewer fund,
The
essentially?
sewer fund, yes, ma'am.
And so that was budgeted into that?
Correct. There was a budget for those buildings, and you can help me if I'm misstepping.
Yeah, I think it's split between water and wastewater.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Okay, great, sorry.
Because I thought it was 4 million something out of each one of them, yeah, okay. All right, excellent.
I might just add, this is great. Thanks, Greg, for that presentation, and congratulations on the award from Pisces. That's for those of us in the construction business, that doesn't come easily, or it's a pretty significant recognition. I'm also reminded that what City Council's role was to follow Councilor Noseworthy's question about sustainability issues. That was a big priority. Of course, this whole thing evolved out of the fact that the CDHP&E gave us basically a do something or get off the pot kind of notification that we were we would become in violation of several environmental laws. So that was the impetus of this whole thing. But in that, we took this opportunity to become a much more sustainable plant and provide something new to the community, which was part of what I assume the award from Pisces was all about. But the council's role in this, we had several presentations, and there are a lot of dollars and cents considerations regarding the Johannesburg process as what basically an A or B type of process. That what are the advantages and disadvantages of each of those kinds of process? The heat exchangers and the creation, creation of electricity for 65-70% of the operation through the methane-powered turbines. Those were ads that were requested by council, effectively, to those members that were about 2 different councils in the past that made these critical decisions to get to where we are today. The dewatering process to one, fix the transit problem that was really a kind of third world effort historically, and the one I hadn't heard about till tonight was the generator, the 100% generator, which would power this plant in the event that La Plata Electric ever went down. This is probably the most critical thing that the city of Durango does, is treat sewer, because that allows everything. You can do it without a water plant for a while, but you can't do it without a sewer plant without mass chaos in your community. So that was a great ad. Thanks for doing that, especially in these days of cyber attacks, because it is a real world thing that where, whether it's Russian trolls or whoever, if they wanted to attack municipalities throughout the country on an ad hoc basis, that would be how they would get us, attack our sewer treatment plant. So that's very cool. 87% done now. I'm reminded from your presentation that in any well-conceived construction project, you do strategic deletions from the budget in order so you have a contingency that you can selectively add those contingency items back into a budget if the project is well managed like this one has been and you have anything left at the end. So you can logistically add back in those things that you previously deleted. So those hard decisions to cut things out of the budget early on are not necessarily a sign that they will never see them. And that's effectively, we've got really well managed on your part, so thank you for that. That's all I have.
Great. Any more questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Boysen.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the update.